It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, January 31st. I'm Wendy Corr, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily newsroom, brought to you by Visit Casper. Visit Casper invites you to come enjoy the Casper International Film Festival today through February 2nd. A broad range of films from local and international filmmakers will be shown. Learn more and get your tickets at visitcasper.com. Charles Hoskinson, a billionaire and founder of the Cardano cryptocurrency platform, has big plans to get involved in local Wyoming politics this year. Hoskinson, who owns a ranch in Wheatland and has family in Gillette, is planning on launching the Wyoming Integrity Political Action Committee this year. In an exclusive interview, he told Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson that the PAC will be built around supporting candidates who can bring more transparent bidding policies to Wyoming.
One of his main priorities that he wants to deal with as part of his Integrity PAC is basically to try to bring more transparency to the state's procurement process as far as taking out bids. Hoskinson had a personal experience with this in a negative way, where his Cardano cryptocurrency company was snubbed from even being allowed to bid to be part of the Wyoming Stable Token project this past fall. He also wants to get rid of corruption and fraud in politics and address other issues, even expanding as wide as game tags issued by Wyoming Game and Fish.
Hoskinson's financial means and existing connections nearly guarantee he will be a major player in the 2026 election cycle. Campbell County high school students have been subjected to health and safety hazards from leaking sewage in hallways and bathrooms. Additionally, the school's fire suppression system is outdated and parts for it are growing unattainable. And the heating and ventilation system is a patchwork of old units that can't keep the temperature under control. But Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that the obvious need for a new high school in Gillette is running at odds with a Wyoming legislature determined to cut property taxes.
Because things are so desperate at Campbell County High School, the House advanced, I think it was $164 million appropriation to the Senate on Tuesday. But they did so with reservations and concerns like, we don't know what all of our property tax reform that we're juggling is going to do. Obviously, the Senate can tinker with it. The Senate can amend, the Senate can cut, the Senate can reject with the knowledge of the property tax cuts that they have just passed.
Around 64% of Wyoming property taxes go toward local schools and the School Foundation program account. The remainder goes to local governments to fund services such as repairing roads and local emergency medical services. A wall of winter weather is heading for Wyoming beginning tonight. Several feet of snow could drop in the mountains this weekend and continue with more snow, wind, and low temperatures into next weekend. Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reports that while there won't be any Arctic waves or polar vortexes this week, there will be enough moisture to make things interesting.
There's a big surge of Pacific moisture that's going to be hitting the western mountains of Wyoming starting on Friday night. And then it's going to be heavy snow, not continuous snow, but heavy snow between Friday and Sunday in the mountains. Now, unfortunately, the system doesn't have the strength to get up and over the mountains and into the lower elevations, but we're still talking about up to 20 inches in Jackson and Star Valley and possibly up to 60 inches in the Tetons. So as we move into February, we're probably going to see more of that unsettled pattern. We'll start seeing more of the white stuff across all of Wyoming.
The National Weather Service has issued winter storm watches for most of western Wyoming and Yellowstone Park from 5 p.m. Friday through 5 p.m. Sunday. A controversial proposal to base Wyoming property tax rates on a home's fair market value and purchase price passed a House committee Thursday. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the sponsor of the bill, Representative Tony Locke of Casper, believes Wyoming homeowners are being taxed based on unrealized capital gains and hope in a system he believes is inherently flawed. But opponents say the plan would bankrupt local communities.
What this bill would basically do is kind of similar to purchasing a vehicle. It would make your property taxes dependent on the purchase price of your home. So this is a big, big deal if this were to pass into law. It is estimated it would cost the state at least $240 million per year in lost revenue. But some people, like the bill sponsor, Representative Tony Locke, argue that it is a uniform and fair way of doing taxation that is actually fair across the board. The head of the Wyoming Board of Equalization Aviation and a few others, including Converse County Assessor Dixie Huxtable, disagreed. And they said that this is unconstitutional and that it basically gives disparate tax breaks based on what a home was purchased for.
Property taxes have become a hot-button topic in recent years. In 2019, property taxes collected in Wyoming amounted to $380 million. By 2024, that number skyrocketed to $652 million. But many have argued that local services have not increased at a corresponding level or at all. And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
Well, after a pretty nice week of weather, it really has been nice. After the Arctic outbreak of last week, this week has brought moderating temperatures, a lot of sunshine, not much wind, and a nice break for everybody. But that break's about ready to end. This will be especially true in the western parts of the state where you need to be ready for snow. We have winter storm watches in effect through late Sunday for all of Wyoming's western mountains, all of Wyoming's western valleys. As we get into tonight, especially late into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, periods of snow will fall in the Wyoming mountain ranges of the west, especially along and west of the Continental Divide. Strong jet stream winds from the Pacific will drive deep Pacific moisture into those mountain ranges. Places like Star Valley, Evanston, Jackson, the upper part of the Green River Basin up around Bondurant, north of Pinedale. You're going to get into the act as well, DuBois. You're going to see heavy snow. Now, the snow won't be as heavy on the east side of the mountain ranges, but as we go through the weekend, especially as we get into Sunday and Monday, some snow could reach the lower elevations of the north, the central, the northeast, and areas adjacent to Wyoming's bigger mountain ranges. Also, the wind will pick up. We haven't had much wind this week, but as we go into today and the beginning of the weekend, especially along and east of the Continental Divide, expect some strong and gusty winds, and the weather's going to stay active, busy, colder, and unsettled next week as well.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 30 seconds with more news.
Year after year, we continue to serve new neighbors across our state.
For over 40 years, our trust in wealth management services have grown our roots in Casper.
And now we're excited to have offices in 3 Wyoming cities.
We're here to help you achieve your financial goals
and provide the kind of service that you expect from a Wyoming business.
Because at Hilltop Bank, community means Wyoming.
As people take their dogs to roam in the woods and fields of Wyoming, pets are getting maimed or killed in traps set too close to public areas. That's what some dog owners told legislators Thursday in testimony before the Wyoming Senate Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee. Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that the dog owners spoke emotionally about the dangers that traps pose to pets.
Last year, we reported that English Bull Terrier Jester had been caught in a trap that unfortunately crushed his neck and throat and killed him. And that inspired his owner to start pushing for trapping reform in Wyoming. And that started to take shape today before a Wyoming Senate committee. They went ahead and forwarded a bill that will apply some reforms to Wyoming trapping, including requiring setback distances for traps on public land that are near busy areas such as trails or roads or places where people might take their pets or even small children. Perhaps prevent these sorts of things from happening again.
The committee voted to forward Senate File 139 to the Senate floor. The bill calls for reforms such as requiring traps to be set back from roads and hiking trails on public land. The Wyoming House made a loud and clear statement Thursday about how voters can and can't turn in their ballots. The House passed House Bill 131 on a 51-10 vote to ban the use of ballot drop boxes in Wyoming. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that while there's been no evidence presented that ballot boxes have enabled fraud in Wyoming, banning the boxes has been a cornerstone of Secretary of State Chuck Gray's election security agenda.
There were 7 counties in Wyoming that used these ballot boxes in the 2024 election, 9 in the election before that. They're provided as a way for people to vote outside of the time when courthouses are open. But they've also been the source of a lot of allegations about fraud and ballot harvesting that were levied during the 2020 election. There's been no evidence of any of that in Wyoming elections whatsoever. But Secretary of State Chuck Gray has really beat the drum on election integrity to get rid of these ballot boxes.
The bill now moves on to the Senate for consideration. Well, in a case that's drawn national attention and triggered a rapid response from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or ASPCA, a Morgan breeder in Madison County, Montana faces criminal charges, and a grassroots campaign tries to keep the 86 horses involved well cared for and fed. A pair of ranch hands alerted authorities when they became concerned that the horse breeder had seemingly stopped caring for his herd. Cowboy State Daily's David Madison reports that a rescue group from Riverton joined forces with others to make sure the animals were rehomed and not sold off for slaughter.
When word got out among Morgan horse people that there are these 86 horses that were going to go up for auction, a Morgan trainer based in Riverton joined a group online and tried to raise money, and they were successful to a degree to get money together to help buy these horses so they weren't auctioned off to someone that might export them for slaughter. And so luckily they didn't have to do that. The owner of the horses came up with the amount to cover the lien. This breeder had a really good reputation, raised wonderful horses. It just appears he's fallen on hard times and has been unable to care for these horses.
The unfolding saga in rural Madison County reveals the significant costs of properly caring for horses and the dedication of Morgan horse fans in particular who rallied to save this herd. And coaches, parents, and ice skaters with the Skating Club of Jackson Hole woke up Thursday to the horrific news that an American Airlines flight from Wichita, Kansas had collided with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter as the plane was coming in for a routine landing at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport in Arlington, Virginia. Among the 60 passengers and 4 crew members on the American Airlines plane were at least 14 ice skaters, coaches, and family members. Cowboy State Daily's Justin George spoke to 2 coaches with ties to the Boston Skating Club that experienced the loss of several of its members in the crash.
These 2 instructors, while they did not know any of the victims, are very much fond and remember strongly the ice skating club there in Boston. One thing that's very interesting is that this is the second air tragedy that this club has had. In 1961, there was also another plane crash involving U.S. figure skaters, in which 10 members of the Boston club died then too. So growing up, these 2 ice skating coaches in Jackson remember, just because it had been talked about all the time in their communities, that this other tragedy had occurred.
Officials say there were no survivors among the 67 passengers aboard the 2 aircraft, just as there were no survivors of the crash in 1961 that also claimed members of the Boston Skating Club. And that's today's news. For a deeper dive into the people and issues that affect Wyoming, check out The Roundup, conversations with the most interesting people in the Cowboy State. A new episode drops tomorrow when I have a conversation with author and adventurer Sam Leitner. You can find the link on our website, on our YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you'll find it in our free daily email newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.